All right, hello everybody. Just want to make sure everybody can hear and see me here before we get things started. And just in case those of you who may not be able to hear me, I've texted it out there, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here before we get things started. Feel free to text in there to the little chat window and make sure. This is also going to be the quickest and easiest way for you to ask questions of me while we're working here through the webinar this morning. Okay, well, I don't see anybody saying they can't, so we're just going to dive on in. Oh, awesome, Layla, thank you. Glad to be able to double check on that. It looks like everybody's icons are looking good over here. We got Layla, Lloyd's, Mod 200, Pete, and Porky Yogi. So, awesome. Great. Well, welcome everybody. I want to thank you all for coming out here today. This is going to be a kind of a fun one for me. I've been doing child photography ever since I had my own kids, and also been doing it in my business there as well for a bunch of other clients. So today we're going to be covering lots of different stuff, and the format's going to be kind of interesting. If you haven't been to one of these before, we'll go through how it all works and all that kind of stuff, but I just wanted to make sure we have all the technical side of things taken care of. And without further ado, let's just dive right in here, and we will get things started with our first PowerPoint section. And this is obviously a webinar from our proudphotography.com called How to Photograph Children, the Good, the Bad, and the Hyper. If you've ever photographed kids, you know that there's a little bit of all three of those, sometimes even in one single kid. So we're going to be looking at lots of different techniques and styles today. It should give us some ideas on what to do. If you've already been shooting kids, you probably have an idea as it is how you're going to do that. But if you haven't, this is going to give you a great starting point for that as well. The webinars themselves, as they're kind of worked through, it's not too hard. We give you lots of different ideas out here, but the first one we want to throw out is a special discount just for you guys, the webinar students here today. This is good for 24 hours, and it gets you $30 off any of the courses that we offer here at proudphotography.com. We've got lots of different courses out here right now: Photoshop for photographers, HDR, wedding, different things like that. There's a couple in here that are also going to be upcoming that we're working and putting together here for the site. If you want to do any of these, though, you're going to need to use the promo code WEB23, and that's going to be the one that kind of gets you the extra $30 off any of the courses that we offer here. So make sure you take advantage of that. I'm actually the tutor for several of those courses, and so we give you guys an opportunity to interact with myself as well as other people on there. And a question from Layla: yes, we do have a course for beginners. That is our main course, actually, the Photoshop, or not the Photoshop one. We have a main course that is just digital photography, and that's going to be the one that pretty much you can start from ground zero with and dive into cameras, whether you have a point and shoot, whether you're using a digital SLR, whatever different kind of camera you have. That's going to be the main one that you have. So it's Proud Photography. It's kind of a 101 course, gives you lots of different options, and really kind of gives you all the basics you need to get started in photography. So yeah, go and check that one out. If you have more questions on that, Layla, make sure that you connect with me here at the end of the course, and I'll give you the link and we'll get you right plugged in there. No problem. So again, 24 hours only for you webinar students, $30 off. Use the code WEB23 in the process there that we've got for the thing on it. So awesome. Well, let's keep going here. We're going to jump into the next one here. The webinar itself, we're going to be doing a couple of different elements throughout the webinar. Sometimes we're going to use a presentation. Sometimes I'm going to be a live view. In this case, you're going to always be able to see me, my little mug over here on the side. But I'm always going to stop for questions because, frankly, a webinar is no good if you're just sitting there staring. You could watch a video and do the same thing, right? I want to do interactivity. So if you have questions, make sure in the little chat window here on the left side that you type in whatever the question is. I will scroll up and down throughout. I have sections actually broken out just for questions in there. If you wanted to type them in at that time, whatever works for you. But I do break up the presentations so that you have a little bit of extra time to ask questions along the way, because frankly, that's what this is about. We want to get interactivity. We want you guys to feel like you're learning, you're getting your questions answered, all that different kind of stuff. We're also going to take quiz time in here. There's going to be a couple of different quizzes that kind of come out. I'm going to show a short video in between a couple of the PowerPoints. So you guys should have a chance here to kind of really learn something and take home a few different ideas that hopefully are new to you, but if not, they're a good refresher. The course itself, however, is not exhaustive. It's going to help you make photographing children enjoyable, less intimidating. If you've never photographed kids, it can be a little bit scary because, frankly, they don't always stand still. They don't do what you want. You go in there with an idea and you think, this is going to be great, but it doesn't always work out. So we're going to give you the tools and the tips to calm yourself down as much as to calm them down and to get great looking shots. The goal for this webinar is to make you familiar with some of the advanced concepts, but also give you practical tips to apply the different concepts in your own photography. So that's kind of where we want to take you. We're going to slowly move forward with some of those things. We're going to cover a couple of different ideas, how to shoot kids. We're going to look at different locations for shooting kids, how to make them look natural, and make them look like they're having fun, ways to win cooperation. That's going to be a big one. You got to work with the kid. You can't just order them around because kids don't always respond to that. You got to get their spontaneity, and sometimes you even need to use lighting, reflectors, different stuff like that. So we're going to talk all about some of those little details here throughout the rest of the webinar here this morning. Do you have any questions, though? This is one of those break moments where I always take and say, if you've got a question right from the beginning, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to dive in head first, and we're going to bust out here to the next question section. So let me know in the chat window. If you aren't showing anything there, I'm going to keep on moving. All right, I don't see anything popping up, so I'm assuming you all are clear as mud on this, and we're going to keep barreling forward. The biggest thing that we got to know about these different things here is location. Location is always going to be a big factor, especially when it comes to shooting kids. The kids themselves are usually already in some place. They know where they want to be. They know how they want to be there, and they've got an idea already of what they're kind of working with. So we want to jump into this and kind of just find out exactly where they want to shoot. It's really dependent on the type of shots that you want. Are they more formal? Are they informal? Sometimes the parents of the kids have an idea of whether they want. Sometimes they want them posed. Sometimes they want them just in a location. You've got to find out the place that the kid is comfortable as well as the parent. If you are the parent, obviously you can kind of take your kids wherever you want them. Personally, I kind of think that child photography comes off better if it's in a natural setting. If the kid is in a place that they're already familiar with and they kind of know what things are, it just comes out easier. They're not nervous, they're not awkward or shy in front of the camera as much because they already know the setting a little bit. Unless you have a bigger budget, for studio type stuff, I go with what's natural, especially when I'm starting out with things. The pictures turn out great. If you get in nice and tight on the subject, the location itself is just an additional element that makes the pictures look awesome. Layla had a quick question. What do we do if a kid starts getting mad at you? Frankly, if the kid starts getting mad at you, I would stop whatever you're doing. Whatever you're doing that's making them mad. Put the camera away, sit down, and just kind of pull back from everything, because sometimes anger is a response to being nervous. It's a response to being afraid of something that they don't understand. Sometimes they already came in angry. I've had actually more often than not, the kid's not mad at me as the photographer. They get upset at their parents if that's going to happen, and that's because sometimes parents can be a little overbearing. They really want this to work. They've only got an hour and a half to do this. They're paying money. They are the ones that usually get more frustrated than not. If it's my own kid, sometimes, yeah, you gotta work with them a little bit. They're going to interact with you as a stranger a little bit differently than with their parents. So if you are the parent and the photographer, it's a dynamic you got to kind of work with. So it's a good question there, Layla. I appreciate that one. The next thing that we're going to look at is just some of the best places to shoot. For me, I found that the easiest places, the free places, are things like parks. There's usually play equipment there. You've usually got a little bit of extra space to run around in. Lots of different elements. You got trees, you got grass. Sometimes you have playgrounds, different things like that. Parks can be awesome. They're free. You can go there during the day when the lighting is just right. Usually there's some good shade, and shade is definitely something that you want to take into account when shooting kids. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we hit the lighting part. Gardens is another one. Gardens are a little bit more formalized, honestly. There's flowers, obviously, and you don't want to necessarily get the kids all jumping into the middle of the presentations and all that stuff. But gardens can still be really cool, especially for kind of that middle road between formal and informal. You can get beautiful shots because the gardens are usually manicured and they look nice, and the kids are acting natural, though, in kind of a more formal setting. So it's a nice balance between the two. One of my favorite places, if you live in a place that's got water, whether it's a lake or an ocean or beaches, are awesome to shoot at. You can do all kinds of stuff at beaches. There's usually things around on the ground. There's sand. The kids are going to naturally just have fun at the beach. And if you're willing to kind of just walk with them and be around them a little bit, you can get some great natural shots that are not canned. They don't come off weird. The kids are just having a good time with them. So beaches, some of my best shots. You'll see a couple of my kids here later on in some beach shots. Those have been some of my best ones. Open spaces. When I say open spaces, I mean some place that's just got room for the kid to run. That can be a park, garden, beach, wherever. Sometimes even in a gymnasium. We've had good chances there because it's an open space that the kid doesn't feel cramped in. They can be themselves. Usually kids are kind of energetic and they want to run around. I usually let them do a little bit of that. I follow them. I honestly come back, my back is usually a little bit sore after a kid shoot because I'm hunching down and I'm bending over and I'm trying to get at their level and running all over the place with them. So wide open spaces are usually a great thing if you can get the kids out into those. Another good spot, and this is the opposite of wide open spaces, is their bedroom. If you're at a home and you've got stuff around and the bedroom isn't super messy, their room is their most comfortable place usually. And if you kind of walk around, ask them to show you their favorite toys or to show you their bed or whatever, they love doing that kind of stuff. And if you can get them in their own natural setting, I find that sometimes the room of the kid is one of the best places to get the natural expressions that we're all hoping for. Kid shots, you want a natural expression. We're all trying to get that perfect smile that really captures who they are. And the parents know what those smiles look like, so that's what they're going for too. Another fun one, if you're shooting around a time when there's Christmas or holiday lights, those are super great places, especially if you're out and about walking downtown in an old section of town just before sunset when the lights are on but the lighting isn't too dark yet. Those can be some awesome pictures because the kids are excited, they're looking, their faces are usually glowing with the lights of the colors. Those can be really kind of fun ones. Same thing with fairgrounds. I've done a few shoots with my own kids at state fairs, and those have turned out really neat because they're walking around just like before. When lights are on all over the place, there's activity, but they get some really neat, candid moments where their faces are lit up and they're excited, just watching all the things happening. So kind of think about around those kind of ideas. Those have been some of the best shoots for me, but honestly, any place. I mean, kids can be looking great all over the place. So there's lots of different options and ideas in there. Some of the ones that I've had have even been in weird places like the grocery store. Those have been pretty fun ones too. So keep your camera around with you. If you're shooting your own kids, you can find almost any good location. Those are some of the better ones that I've run across myself. There's really no wrong place. That's what I'm kind of saying. It comes down to the fact that if they are comfortable, you will get good pictures. If you can interact with them, have some fun, and they don't feel nervous, you're going to get great candid moments. Shots where their face is natural, where they're excited, where they're laughing. Like I said, I got great shots of my kids at the grocery store sometimes because they're natural. They're who they are, and they're having a good time. So looking for those kind of moments and those chances are some of the best photographic moments for kids, no matter where they are, if they're comfortable. Zeroing in on the spontaneity of the moment. This is one that it's kind of, it can be a little bit daunting because it's not a planned thing. Spontaneity, as by definition, is not a planned moment. You can't choose it, you can't make it happen, it just happens. And that's why, honestly, whenever I have my camera, I usually have my finger on the shutter button at all times with kids, because you want to make sure you can squeeze in every little detail they've got. There's moments that fly by during a shoot, and if you aren't ready for them, they're gone. I've had some baby shoots, newborns anyway, that they are ready and they're happy for about 10 seconds, and that was the only time I got any pictures in the entire shoot, because they got upset, they're hungry, something happened, and it's all crying after that. Those moments are fleeting, so you want to zero in and do everything you can to capture the spontaneity. Usually kids take less time getting comfortable in front of the camera, I found. They don't have a lot of I don't know if it's just they don't really realize what the camera's doing, or if they're just used to having pictures taken of them, but they're usually more comfortable in front of a camera than adults are. But, however, even though they're more comfortable, they don't take posing instructions very well, honestly. And if you've ever shot kids, you already kind of know that. A good rule of thumb: if you can make the sessions fun, you're going to get some great shots. If you're too focused on getting a perfect pose, if you're too focused on your lighting, you're going to lose them, and they're not going to hold still for that. Most of the time, getting them to hold still is the bigger problem. And so I try to just be natural with them. That's why I like open areas with natural light. I don't have to think about my shutter speeds and all that. I can just kind of focus on, here's the kid, set the camera. The light doesn't really change a whole lot during the shoot. If you're in a studio setting, obviously things are different. You're going to have to work with a few more variables. That's why starting out, I usually prefer to just take the kid into a comfortable place and get the most natural pictures I can. If you're going for pose type stuff, you can work with them, but here's my biggest tip for working with kids. Tip number 1, put the kid in charge of things 50% of the time. And when I say in charge of things, here's what I mean. Your first instinct, usually as a photographer, is you're going to want to make these kids pose for you. But the best thing you can do as a photographer is just relax. Put the camera down. When you first get there with the kid, don't be pointing it out in front of their face and just going crazy on it. It's something you just need to get used to with them. They know what they want to do for the day. You as a photographer have to discover what they want to do for the day. But there's always a little bit of give and take. That's why I say put them in charge 50% of the time. If you relax, you put the camera down, you get to know them, ask what kind of poses they want to try. If they're old enough to talk back and forth to you, they usually have some pretty good ideas. You know, if they're younger, obviously you've got to work with them, you got to move them around, make sure they're not crying and stuff. But if they're old enough to talk to, they've got some ideas. They're creative. They want to do something. They think they know what they think is going to be fun. And usually, if they think it's fun, you're going to get some cool pictures out of it. Tell them right up front, I'm going to split this whole shoot with you 50-50. You can pose the way you want to pose half the time if you're willing to pose for me half the time. And usually they're willing to make a deal. So if they know that they can be crazy and have fun and do some weird stuff, they're going to be more willing to do what you want them to do during the shoot as well. So I usually split it with them. I say 50-50, you get half, I get half, we'll have a great time, you're going to get some awesome pictures. And show them. Make sure you flip the camera around when they're doing some of the crazy shots that they think are cool. Make sure you show them exactly what you're doing. Makes it more fun for them, and you get more shots of the ones that you actually want. Tip number 2. Run, skip, and jump. Don't just make them stand next to a tree or lean on a wall like you might be thinking. This is not a formal senior level photo shoot. You got to get them active and moving. That's who they are. They're already bouncing around. They're already running. If you can get them outside and doing that kind of stuff and get good pictures while they're doing it, that is the most real them. Playgrounds are fantastic, obviously, for this kind of thing. The kids are usually excited to be there. They want to run around and do things. But be ready. You know, you've got to actually have the camera up and ready to go. A lot of times, when I'm shooting with a digital SLR, I have my autofocus in the burst mode, in the one that actually focuses constantly. And that's because they're constantly moving and the focus needs to constantly change with them. It's kind of like shooting action sports or animals. Anything that moves quickly, put your camera into burst mode, put it into autofocus tracking mode, and you've got to keep on the subject there as much as possible, because really they're just going to keep going. And if you're outside running around with them, you'll get those great shots, but you got to be ready for them. Tip number, oh no, sorry, I moved out of the tip there. We also need to think about how to get them looking natural and having some fun. That's hard sometimes because they come in already, like I said, sometimes the parents put a lot of extra pressure on them. Sometimes there's just a stressful situation. Sometimes they just woke up. You never really kind of know what you're coming into with some of these things. So getting them to look natural, have a little bit of fun is one of the first things you got to do. Now, I've already just said, try not to pose them if you can help it. But if they're a little bit older, there is some better ways to pose kids if they're able to take instructions like that. Posing girls versus posing boys. They're different. And sometimes pictures look better depending on the gender here. For the hands, whenever I ask a kid to do something with their hands, I have the girls keep their hands open. As you can see there on the screen, the little girl on the swing, her hands are out and open. She's doing something with them. But for boys, I usually have them a little bit more closed. I have them cross their arms, or I have them stick their thumbs in their pants pockets, something like that. Something that kind of just keeps them natural. It seems to work a little bit better depending on the genders for that. Their positions, a cute side glance can be good for girls, but I usually try to do straight-on shots with the boys. It's a gender thing. It's what our eyes kind of are drawn to. It's kind of also what we expect without even realizing it for certain kinds of shots. None of these are rules, though. These are things that you try out. If they don't work, you try something different. But this is some of the things that I've kind of come to that have worked out pretty well for me as I'm kind of working with stuff. Another thing, when they got their hands on their hips, a lot of times that's a natural, it's kind of a grown-up pose, but girls seem to gravitate towards that. So I have a girl put hands on the hips, sometimes hands in the pockets for boys, like I said, the belt loops with your thumbs or something like that. They don't always know what to do with them, so you got to tell them, okay, put your hands here, cross your arms, put the thumbs in the loop, something like that. One of my favorite shots, both boys and girls, is the face resting in the hands. Frankly, I do this for adults too. This little shot of my buddy here, Toby, he was just outside, we were running around, and then I just told him, hey, lay down, put your hand like that. beautiful shots. They smile easily in those moments. They're kind of feeling relaxed. You can get some great stuff for that. So for both genders, I always do a face resting in the hand shot just to get them kind of loosened up. But also, it's a good posed moment. We kind of gravitate to those kind of shots anyway, so those always look really great. Another thing, tip number 3, here's one I was missing on there. If they are crying, and this is going to happen, this is a big part of child photography, just give them what they want, okay? This doesn't come from my parenting side. I've got 4 kids. That's not what I do to my kids. But as the photographer, if they're crying, that's wasted time, and it makes their eyes puffy, it makes the tears. You have a hard time recovering from a really hard cry. So if there's something that they want and that's why they're crying, just give it to them. If it's their parents, pass them back to their parents for a while. If it's food, let them eat for a while, brush the crumbs off, whatever. The kid is not going to be looking great if they're crying. If they're inconsolable, you just got to give them something. You're not going to convince them that they don't want it. And that's the thing as a photographer. You're not going to say, hey, you've got a certain amount of time, your parents are paying for this, you've got to act right, do this. They're not going to do that. They don't care. The distractions aren't going to last long if they're really upset. So you're going to get happier smiles if they are actually happy. So whatever it takes, give them what they want. Like I said, that's not my parenting advice, but that is my photographer advice. All right, zeroing down there from that spontaneity moment. This is one thing that I always have kind of worked on with what you actually try to see them do. And this is where you don't take pictures. For this particular idea, watching what they are actually doing is going to inform what kind of pictures you're going to take. If you go in there with a whole list of, I want this shot, I want this shot, I want this shot, you're going to have a hard time getting that list figured out there by the end of the shoot. But if you take 10 minutes at the beginning of things, put your camera down, sling it over your shoulder, just walk around the location with them at the beginning of it, look for some good places to shoot. That's what you're going to tell them. Hey, we're going to look for some cool spots. Let's just walk around and see what we see. That's what you're telling them, but really, you're just kind of seeing how the kid interacts with their surroundings. And if you've got that feel of, hey, they really like playing on the swings, or they love building sandcastles down there on the shoreline, you're going to know what they gravitate to, and then you can just work with where they're going. You say, hey, okay, let's go back over to the swing set. Yeah, let's do that. Or you kind of can tell where they want to go. If you give them some fun things to do, they're going to be more willing to do some other stuff later on that you want them to do. If you know you want a shot of them down on their knees, looking through some flowers, whatever, they're going to be more willing to do that if they've already had fun doing the things they already wanted to do. So keep an eye out, whatever they're moving towards, whatever they seem to gravitate to, look for those kind of things at the beginning of the shoot that makes the shoot fun and then gives you some reward because they're willing to do some things for you later on. Tip number 2, your poses and your attempts to pose. Just set them up and leave them. Don't worry about doing a bunch of other stuff. Let the kids get comfortable where they are. If you think, hey, they would look awesome, like with my 2 boys here, standing in front of this piece of driftwood, sit them over by the driftwood and then just kind of let them do what they're going to do. If you just tell them to stand there, they're going to be all stiff and look like, I'm smiling. Wait, is this what I'm supposed to do? They don't want to do that for too long. I just let them interact, and after a while, they just start looking fun. They look better because they're getting comfortable in whatever position you put them in. Don't fiddle with them. A lot of times as photographers, we want to tweak things. We want to pull this. We want to pull that. You know what? If their hair's out of place, fix it later in Photoshop or something. Get a good expression. You can't Photoshop the perfect smile, the perfect laugh. If you can catch the perfect laugh, all these other little details that we sometimes worry about as photographers don't matter that much. So set them up and then just kind of leave them. See what they do. Be ready for that spontaneous moment that really just kind of jumps out at you. Okay, do you have any questions at this point? I always, like I said, try and give people a little bit of extra time here for any questions that come up. But if you do have something, feel free to type them down there in the chat box. I'll give you about 10-15 seconds here. If I don't see something, we're going to jump over here to a quiz to kind of see what you guys are learning here as we go through. And then we're going to hop over to a video that I've got up for you. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything coming up through. Feel free to type it even in the middle of things if you need to. I can take a second and answer questions as we go, but it doesn't look like people have anything, so that is perfectly fine. I am going to hop back over here to my chat window at this point, and I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a quiz and see how you do on that. Don't worry, this is not a recorded thing. This is just to help you learn and see if you're hitting some of the highlights that we've been covering as we kind of work through this. So, Quiz number 1. True or false? To get more natural shots, put the kids in charge of things 50% of the time. True or false? All right, looks like most people have answered, and the answer to this question, oh, we had one more there, sorry. The answer to this question is true. If you want to get natural shots, put the kids in charge of things. And when I say in charge, I mean let them tell you what kind of poses they would like to do. We kind of talked about making that little 50-50 deal with them. If they want to try this crazy idea over here on the swing set, let them try it. As long as they're not going to hurt themselves, give it a chance. I always take pictures of them just to see what comes out. Sometimes it's a good idea. Sometimes you're just building up a little bit of rapport and you're trying to get them to work with you on the other 50% of it. So yeah, to get more natural shots, put the kids in charge 50% of the time, and then they're willing to work with you a little bit more to do the kind of shots you want to do, and they're going to be that much more willing and natural as a result. Good, guys. All right, next one here. We've got question number 2. I'm going to do 3 questions for you, so don't get too super stressed. When posing kids, you've got 3 options. When posing kids, A, give them lots of instruction, try to make them hold still. Or B, keep them sitting or leaning against things to reduce fidgeting. Or C, detailed posing doesn't usually work. You need to let them interact with their surroundings. Choose the most correct of the 3 options when posing kids. All right, awesome. We've got 100% of people saying the option is letter C, and that is correct. Detailed posing just doesn't usually work. You need to let them interact with stuff. Their surroundings, let them interact with you. One of the things that I think is key to good child photography is letting the kid interact with you as a photographer. Talk to them. Make them feel like you're their friend. Just be a nice, cool person that they're excited to hang out with. That usually makes some of the best pictures. But detailed posing, if you're trying to stick them there, yeah, doesn't really work. Good job, guys. And the third one here for this section. If they are crying, A, just keep shooting. B, give them what they want. C, ask the parents to help. If they're crying, A, keep shooting. B, give them what they want. C, ask the parents to help. All right, looks like everybody's answered this one as well, and the answer for this one, most people have gone with letter B. Frankly, that is the one that I would say is the most correct. That's what I said here in the webinar. At the same time, and this is just my own little caveat to it, since I didn't have a way of saying all 3, sometimes just keep shooting is what I've found. There's crying moments that pass quickly. If you can tell this is a real tantrum throw-out session, forget the pictures. A lot of times I have to ask the parents for help too, because they know what the kid wants more than I do. But most of the time, the ground principle of crying is give them what they want. Make them calm down. Just do whatever it takes, basically, at that point. Sometimes a little distracting, stuffed toys or something work. Not for too long, I've found most of the time. Usually that's good enough to get 1 or 2 shots, or it's good to make them look at you. But if there's a real throwdown tantrum, that's not going to fix things. So give them what they want. Ask the parents what they want. Just make it happen in some way. Good job, guys. All right, we are going to hop over to a short little, it's about 5-minute video. I found this video here, and she's a good little photographer. She's got lots of great ideas, and I wanted to share you guys with this one because she's been online there, and she's got a couple different episodes, so she's worth looking up here, and I am about to jump over here to the video. Just to be forewarned, if you're using Firefox, we found that the YouTube links don't seem to come through correctly, so make sure you're using Chrome, or I haven't tested it in the Windows Edge browser here lately, but we know for sure Firefox has been having problems with that. So if you're in Firefox, quickly copy and paste the address, jump over to another browser. I'm using Chrome here at the moment, and then it should work fine for you. So otherwise, I'm going to start up the video here, and we should be good to go.
It's Leah Remelet with GoForProPhotos.com, and this is Video Friday. And today we are going to talk about 5 tips and tricks for photographing kids. is the Pez dispenser. These little babies are invaluable during my sessions because they help me keep the kids wanting to stay focused on the task at hand, which is great pictures. So all I've done is I've trimmed down the foot on the Pez dispenser just a little bit on one side so that I can get it to fit in my shoe mount. I use my kitchen scissors. I'm sure there's something better to use, but I use that and I can just slide these right into my shoe mount, and then as they're doing a great job during the session, they get a treat. Now there is one little thing to think about, which is little tiny hands will suddenly be doing this for every single picture. So you want to make sure that they know that you will let them know when they get one, and that they will get one after a great shot, and then you just kind of remind them to bring their hands down. But for the really little ones, they might have a hard time remembering that. Tip number 2 would be to learn about your little clients before the session. So before the session ever happens, I've already talked to mom on the phone and I've gotten some information to learn more about her kiddos. I know what they're into, I know what ages they are, what grades they're in, what their favorite subjects might be. So this is gonna give me a foundation on where to start. So when I get to the session, I already have some ideas of what they would enjoy talking about. Tip number 3, don't just jump into the session. Now I know we're super excited to get going and we're just ready, and so we get there, we unload our gear and we're like bam, bam, bam. But I would like to suggest taking a little bit of time to just talk with your clients, especially those little clients. So at the start of every single session, I don't even pull out my camera right away. I just talk to the kiddos. And then eventually within about 5 minutes, I'll start to pick up my camera and put it around my neck. But I'm still just having a conversation and just helping them get comfortable with me so that they can feel comfortable in front of my camera. Tip number 4 would be punches. I didn't get many of those in my hand. So I have punches. I'm just using a little cute hole punch. This one happens to be a ducky. I have hearts and I have flowers. So I punch out some paper and I put it in my pocket. Then during the session, when you're trying to get the kids to stay in one particular spot, you drop down one of these. So what used to happen is I would get them all posed and set up. I'd be so excited. I'd get to behind my camera and then they would move. So now I use these punches. I pull one out of my pocket, I drop one on the floor, and I tell them, okay, I need you to put your foot on my duck, or my flower, or my heart, whatever I have that day. And I don't want you to let him go, okay? Promise me, I really like my little duck, so keep your foot on him and don't let him go. And this way I have enough time to get behind my camera and get the shot that I'm looking for. Tip number 5 is to take your time. Don't rush through the portrait session. Your clients are going to appreciate you taking the time to really get the shot right. And if it's not right, if you see something that's wrong, don't just wish you would have gotten it right. Go and fix it. Sometimes you'll notice that your sessions with people you know and are really comfortable with might be way, way better than sessions with strangers. Well, I think that part of this is because we're not worried about impressing them. So we take the time to get the shots right. Where when we're working with strangers, we get so worried about impressing them that we forget to take our time and to get it right the first time. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Video Friday and that you'll be able to take 1, 2, or all 5 of these tips and tricks and use them in your next portrait session with little ones. Until next Video Friday, I'd love to suggest that you subscribe to our YouTube page and sign up for our newsletter so that you never miss the latest and greatest that's happening at gopherprophotos.com. So you're gonna... I wanted them to think...
All right, we didn't need to see the bloopers there, sorry. She had some great tips and tricks there. I liked the Pez dispenser one especially, and I thought the ideas with the little hole punchy things to keep the kids sitting down, that's genius. I actually haven't tried that one, and I'm going to try to work that one a little bit. Looks like some people over here in the chat window are telling me that they've got a few buffering issues. That, like I said, can be sometimes due to bandwidth. If you need to, you can actually turn off the video portion of me. So that means you don't have to stare at my lovely visage here, but that's okay. If you can hear the audio, that's probably the part you're going to need to hear the most. So if you're having any clipping issues or the audio is cutting in and out, try turning off my video portion and just leave my audio portion running. So yeah, without that, it says video is good. Awesome. So yeah, sorry about that. I do think it's probably a bandwidth issue. Everybody's internet is a different speed coming into wherever they're at. So sometimes it's hard to predict that, but we always work with what internet we've got. Okay, I am going to jump back over here, and we're going to do our second portion of the presentation. I'm going to stop this one there real fast and pull up the second one. The second one is going to look at a few more of the technical details, but it's also going to look at some of the specifics on how to keep getting those pictures that you want of your kids looking awesome. Again, just as a quick reminder for anybody, today for 24 hours we are offering $30 off any of the courses on our site. You got to use that promo code WEB23, and we do have our main course, which is our most popular one right now, and that's for anybody who wants to just get into photography. You can have a point and shoot camera, you can have a DSLR, whatever kind of camera you have, that course is the one that's going to get you started, and it covers a lot of stuff. I've been teaching that course for almost 8 years, and it's been a blast. We've had thousands of people come through that have been loving what they've got. So if you get a chance and you haven't signed up for that one, do give it web code WEB23, and that'll get you $30 off straight at the door. All right, keep moving on here. The interactivity of the webinar itself, like I said, sometimes we're going to use presentations, we're using quizzes. You guys are familiar with this at this point. We've already kind of done a couple of these things for you, so we're going to move on to the next portion of our teaching today. The best lighting, reflectors, and camera settings. Now, this is something that is technical, but frankly, shooting kids is a little bit different than shooting a landscape per se, or a macro, or different things like that. First and foremost, lighting is probably going to be your biggest enemy. When you're shooting kids, keep your lighting simple. That's why initially at the beginning of the webinar, I said try and get into shaded areas. Shaded areas have much more balanced lighting. There's not any harsh shadows or harsh highlights. If you're in the shade, you're going to be in a much better place to move no matter where the kid goes. They're always going to look pretty good. So if you can keep the lighting as simple as possible, don't put them out in the bright sunlight. Don't use a flash that pops right in their face constantly. Those situations are probably just going to be kind of hard. Unless you're in a studio, natural light I think is going to be your better option. You got to keep them down there in some sort of a balanced place. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing a lot of photoshopping later on, or you're just going to have a lot of pictures that are frankly unusable. That's what you don't want. Reflectors and other stuff. I kind of just threw these all in here in one thing. Even though I love this stuff. I mean, this is my bread and butter, man. I'm a tech guy. I love reflectors. I love flashes. I love all kinds of gadgets and gizmos. That is awesome because it makes beautiful lighting, but it's a lot of extra baggage with kids, honestly. When you're running around with kids, you can sometimes get away with using reflectors, but unless they really don't move a lot, you're going to have a tougher time with it too. I don't do a whole lot of extra stuff, frankly. If I'm shooting kids, it's me, my lens, and maybe my external flash just to kind of keep things lit if I needed to. And if you're in a tough lighting scenario, okay, make things easier on yourself. If the kid's running around at a park in the middle of the day and it's bright light, don't try to use flashes. I mean, if you've got it and you're really comfortable with an external flash, great, because then you can balance things out a little bit. But if you're fussing with it because you're not super comfortable with the gear, or you're trying to use an assistant to hold the reflector right, kid's not going to hold still for that. So I don't use those kind of things because it's frankly a high-speed scenario, and I want to get the right expression more than I want to get the perfect balanced reflected light. So put them in the shade, keep them in an even balanced place, and minimize all the extra gear that you're shooting on with. Here's the settings that I use when I'm taking pictures of kids. Like I said before, it's pretty much the same thing as if you were at a sports event shooting soccer or baseball or something like that. I always go into continuous or burst mode, meaning if I hold the shutter button down, I get a burst of pictures. Just blast them through. That's because kids move, and you sometimes just need to hold the trigger button down and get every shot you can get. Next, I worry about my focus. If you're using a Canon DSLR, it's called AI Servo, and if you're using Nikon, it's called continuous focus. Both of them, no matter what, basically it means the camera is going to track your subject and is going to constantly adjust the focus based on where they're at. Like my webcam right now is doing autofocus on my hand and kind of pulling things back, and it's always focusing and following where my hand goes. That's what you want your camera to do, because the kid's going to move, and if you just lock the focus and try to take the picture, he's already shifted a little bit and he's blurry. So when it comes to focus, I go into continuous or AI server mode to make sure that all my shots come out nice and sharp. Finally, exposure settings. You don't want to do manual. P mode in this case, or just the regular automatic picture mode, is your friend. I don't do the fully automatic one. That's the one where the pop-up flash comes up all the time if you have that kind of a camera. That one's annoying. I go to P mode, which usually means everything's automatic except the flash doesn't pop up all the time. Either way, though, you need to be in auto exposure settings, whatever type of camera you have, because all those other manual modes are going to be hard unless the kid is really calm. If you got a sleeping newborn, or if you've got a kid that just woke up, You can probably play a little bit more with some of those. But as soon as they move their head a little bit, if you've already locked the focus or if you've got a weird lighting scenario, then things are going to get fuzzy. So I go in auto for them and just keep my focus on a tracking feature just to keep as much as possible not having to worry about my camera. The kid is the thing that you're focusing on. You want to make them smile. You want to make them look natural. You want them getting to do stuff. That's where you want to put most of your attention. So if you can, put your camera in a mostly auto type of mode and keep them moving with it. Then we wanted to talk about props and stuff to play with. This is where a lot of people go crazy with it. I've seen a lot of photographers out there who have entire rooms dedicated to just props, backdrops, different things to have the kids sitting in, and those things can be awesome. Those are more studio style shots. Props, though, are your friend, no matter what they are. Whether you've just got the little Pez dispenser, whether you give them a stuffed animal to hold, they are going to be your friend, because if the kid has something to play with or to pose with, you can usually get some great shots out of them. With kids photography, there's all kinds of little details, but this is one of the ones that I would say definitely you want to jump in on, because the kid is more comfortable with things to play with or to hold. They're distracted a little bit. Maybe they aren't looking all over the place or running around. They just kind of zoom in on whatever they got. So if you've got a prop or the kid has a prop that they brought with them, use that thing. Do as much as you can with it. Consider all age groups that you're going to be shooting. You know, a lot of people have bins of props that they bring with them to the shoot because they have a couple different kids that are different ages. Some kids are going to be interested in this, other ones are going to be interested in that. So consider the age groups that you have. Personally, for me, one of the great places to get cheap props is second-hand stores. Sometimes I go to the Goodwill or things like that because there's just cheap stuff there and you can try things out. You can get baskets, you can get blankets, you can get toys, all different kinds of stuff there to make it work out. But don't get too elaborate, and this is my personal preference. Some people get really elaborate. You've got Ann Gettys out there, and you got a lot of people who do some amazing stuff. But personally, when I'm shooting kids, I don't get super elaborate with things. Otherwise, I find the props get kind of distracting, and you don't want to be taking pictures of props. Your subject is the kids. So if you're taking kids, give them one, maybe two things to work with, and just let them play with it. See what they do. They'll tell you if they like it or not. If they drop it after 5 seconds, not the right prop. Do something different. Keep it simple, though. Keep it natural looking, because the kids are going to be more the subject and more the focus of the picture if they don't have a bunch of stuff around them. Like I said, there's none of these are hard and fast rules. Amazing photographers out there have tons of different props and they make things work. That's their thing. That's great. For me, as a simple photographer, I'm all about getting the expression right, and I'm interacting with a kid. So I give him one or maybe two things. For example, my son here, he was just playing with a leaf, and I said, "Hey, hold that up and cover one of your eyes with it." Got some great shots out of it. He's a cute little guy. He's playing with it, peeking from behind the thing. It was this simple and it was spontaneous, but it really worked out nice. Here's some prop ideas, some specifics for you. Find things to sit on. And this is honestly one of my secrets. I always carry a box, or I carry some sort of a stool, and I put blankets over it, or I put covers over it, something that the kid sits on, because if they're sitting on the floor, you're going to be down there on the floor at their head level taking all the shots. That's kind of hard. Plus, it doesn't look as natural. Their legs are totally flat. They aren't bent or anything. I usually take some sort of a stool or a box, and I drape a cover over it of some kind. That's what I did here with my little guy who's counting out money there. Something to sit on is usually great. Sometimes it's a chair, sometimes it's a bench, whatever they've got. Sometimes I cover it, sometimes I don't. But if you've got something to sit on, you've got a pretty versatile thing that you can kind of play with and make some cool stuff with. Toys, obviously a great thing. Baskets, if they're younger kids, you can place them in the basket. A lot of newborns have some great shots when they're actually all cuddled up inside the basket, wrapped up in things. Blankets are super great. They can make a backdrop as well as the thing to sit on. I typically have one of these really fluffy polyester blankets that I use for newborn shots, and I drape it up the back side of the couch, and then I pull it down onto the floor a little bit, put a bench underneath of it, and I've got a makeshift studio shot right there. All the lighting is soft because the material is easy to work with. Makes things really easy. So blankets, man, I use those things all the time. Stuffed animals, again, like I said, less is more when it comes to stuffed animals, in my opinion. If it's one of their favorites, toss it in there and see what they do with it. Sometimes it's kind of fun to do grown-up items. As you can see over here, my little guy here, we threw some money at him, and I think we're still throwing money at him, and he's already 6 or 7 at this point, so this was a future image of what's going to be happening for the rest of my life. But in this case, he turned out awesome. We put him in a little suit. He was playing with the money. He looks like he's an accountant in waiting. It was great. sometimes giving them grown-up things like a watch or your wallet or keys or something like that can come up with some great shots because they love to play with adult stuff, right? They're kids. They like playing with our stuff. So I find giving them grown-up items, things that they're going to be interacted or interested in, just makes things even that much better. All right, last section here that I'm going to talk about is costumes or no costumes. Frankly, there's a large raft of opinions on this one. I'm going to give you my opinion on this one because frankly, costumes, no costumes, figure out your type of shot. Tip number 1, look at the surroundings you're in and see if a costume would naturally fit there. In the case of my little guy here, obviously we're in a pumpkin patch, dressing him up as a pumpkin. That made sense, right? He may not like us in 10 years from now, but that's not a problem. He's cute, and we liked it, and we thought it was awesome. Look at your surroundings. If it naturally fits in, great. If your kid is running around in a little Minions costume or something from the movies at a formal event, well, that could be funny just because it's kind of weird and out of place, but I try to make it fit naturally, visually, with wherever we're at. Don't just be like, hey, that's a cool outfit, let's just throw it in there. I don't think those work. Some people like that kind of stuff, great for snapshots, but if you're doing formal shots that you really want to look awesome, things you want to put on your wall, do a little bit of thinking about what would fit here, what would not. Use your best judgment on that. If you're going to go for formal portraits, I honestly think costumes kind of distract from that. Just dress the kid up nice in solid colors, avoid patterns and things like that, and just get some good shots in there. But sometimes costumes work. It depends on if it's Halloween, if it's Christmas. Go with the flow on it. Figure out what kind of shot you want. Let them play in it. That's one of the other things. Tip number 2. I have my little girl out in these, obviously, the tulip fields. The colors of the costume matches the tulips. Again, I took the surroundings into account. Usually you want to give them time, though, because if they're not getting a chance to really play in the costume, they're going to look weird in it. It's going to be awkward to them. So give them a chance to play in the costume, check things out, do stuff in it. They need to feel comfortable, whatever it is. And then, after a while, they're going to forget they have it on. It's not going to be a new thing anymore, and they're just going to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go play on the swings now. That's what you want. You want them in the costume looking normal. If they're picking at it, they're distracted, just back off. Let them do what they're going to do for a while. The one thing with kid photography that we're usually tempted to do is take a picture of every little moment. You know what? Sometimes it's just being natural, being relaxed. Your own state of mind transfers to the kid. They're very empathic. And so if you are comfortable, if you are relaxed, they're going to mirror that. And if you got them in a costume, let them play in it until they kind of forget they have it on, and then take pictures of them doing whatever they're doing with the costume on. That's why I say kind of let them play in it, back off a little bit. Tip number 3, frankly, when it comes to costumes, just go with whatever works. Sometimes costumes get in the way. Sometimes they only want to wear the hat. Don't go in there and say, you have to wear the entire pirate outfit. This is what I planned. Just go with it, whatever works. In this case, my daughter's playing with a food wrapper. You know what? She was smiling because she thought that food wrapper was so amazing. Great, go with that. Whatever they're doing, just go with it. That's my kind of my golden rule, frankly, of children's photography. If they're into what's going on, you're gonna get some good shots. So if it is not part of the plan, scrap the plan. Keep taking pictures, get them to smile, and do something fun. That, to me, has been some of my best pictures, at least of my own kids, as well as other people's. So that kind of keeps you going on it, and that's my opinion of costumes, and I will stand by it. All right, questions. I've got a video over, or a chat box over here from Layla. She's asking, how about crayons and coloring books? Crayons and coloring books can be awesome. You're probably going to have to get down low so that you're getting a good profile shot of the face. If you're shooting down, you're going to get most of the top of their head, and their nose kind of makes their face look kind of elongated like this and not so flattering. So if you're into the coloring books and the crayons, get down low with them, kind of get it almost at the level of the paper so that you can get a nice, good picture of their face. You're going to get nice candid moments. You're going to get pictures sometimes of a serious face. But if you do it for too long, I find the kid gets so zoned into the crayons. When you take the crayons away, they get upset. So, make it one of several options. See what they gravitate to. Don't ever just do one kind of thing. Because honestly, in the end of it, if you've only used one, maybe 2 props or 1 or 2 settings, you're going to go there and be like, I really only see 3 pictures and I shot for 2 hours and they all look the same. Vary it up. That's what I would say. Is if you've got crayons and coloring books, great. Use them for 5 minutes, then do something else. Because if you're gonna move the kid around, the kids are pretty mobile. They'll do a lot of different things. Don't you as a photographer get stuck doing one thing because you think it's cool. You'll just come out with too many pictures that kind of all look the same. So good question there, Layla. I appreciate that one. Anybody else have any other questions here for us? If not, if not, I'm going to close us out here then with one final quiz and see how you guys do on that one. Everybody ready for a quiz? Ready, set, and go. When it comes to lighting and reflectors, A, use all the gear you have because kids move fast. B, keep it simple, ditch the reflectors and only use a flash if you need it. Or C, studio lighting usually works out best here. Which of those three options? Already got people chiming in here. That's awesome. Use all the gear you have. A, B, keep it simple, ditch the reflectors. Or C, studio lighting usually works out best. All right, looks like most people have checked in there on their thing, and the answer to this one is B. Keep it simple, ditch the reflectors, and only use a flash if you need to. Like I said, when it comes to the reflectors, lighting, gear, keep yourself simple. You don't want to have to worry about all those things. You want to worry about the kid, what they look like, what kind of expressions they have. So yeah, keep it simple, ditch the stuff you don't need. Awesome. Question number 2. Camera settings for child photography should A, be very similar to sports photography, fast settings and quick focus. B, should always be done in manual mode so that you get the details right. Or C, should be fully automatic. Should be very similar to sports, always done in manual, or be fully automatic. Okay, we had a bit of a split vote on that one. Most people went with letter A, and that's actually the one I would probably say as well. Should be similar to sports, but honestly I can see how letter C would also make sense because I talked about shooting in auto mode down there. So I would say actually both of you guys are right, since I didn't word that maybe quite as well as it could have, but mostly I would say it tends more towards sports photography, because if it's in full auto, a lot of times your flash pops up, and you don't want your flash to pop up when you don't want it to. So I usually go into sports mode, shoot fast settings, quick focus, and if I'm using a flash, I want to make sure it's only when I want it. So I use the P mode on my camera. I think P mode is cross on both Canon and Nikon, so it's a fairly standard labeling there for that one. So yeah, not fully automatic, so the flash goes, but enough automatic that you don't have to worry too much about your extra settings. And the final question for today's webinar is going to be this, making an easy one for you guys, true or false. The best thing to do is have a ton of props and let them play with everything to get used to it. True or false? Have a ton of props, let them play with everything. What do you guys think? Okay, I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Seems like we got a couple more people who are choosing. All right, and the answer to this one, I say this one is false. Having a ton of props there can be distracting for the kids. Like I said, keep it simple, a couple of props, maybe 1 or 2 at most in the picture. But at the same time, those who said true are partially right. I can see where you might have been thinking having options for them, because I did say have more than one option for different age groups. So yeah, but in general I would say false is the best answer here, because if you have too many props in the picture, things can get really distracting and the kids can get distracted, so you gotta kind of work with them a little bit back and forth. So I would say false on that one. But if you said true, I wouldn't say you're completely wrong. I totally understand where you would be coming for that one. All right, folks. Again, remember that we've got that great little $30 off promo here for you, 24 hours from right now. So if you were here tomorrow PST at 11 a.m. You could still make that in there. The web code for that is going to be Web23. So make sure you come over. We'd love to have you in there. Like I said, I'm the tutor for the main courses over on that side. You'll be working with me directly on all those. We'd love to have you in there. Otherwise, I hope you guys have had a good time with this one. If you have any more final questions, feel free to type them into the chat window, and I will answer as they come. But otherwise, we hope you've had a good time with this. You've learned a lot, given yourself some new ideas on how to work with kids and kid photography, and ultimately, just get out there and keep trying, keep practicing, and do some great stuff. We've had a great time with you here today. Do look for us in the future. We're going to be doing some more webinars. We're going to try and do them maybe a couple of times a month here as we're starting out. A couple of different ideas. We've got some for getting better landscapes, how to use lighting, maybe doing some macro photography, a couple of different topics like that. If you have a suggestion that you'd like to see us do for upcoming webinars, feel free to shoot us an email here. Check us out on the website. We're going to be doing a lot of different stuff like that. So I hope you've had a great time today, and hopefully we'll be able to see you again soon. If you've had a good time, be sure to pass us around to your friends. We'd love to fill this thing up with as many people out there as possible. Get out there, have fun, capture some great shots. We had a great time with you guys.